like to do some short exercise with you. And just a short notice, there is the models, the spider model, which we're going to the first step of the game. It's the link is just below this webinar, so just be ready and be prepared with the model. Just print it, or if you don't want to print it, if you don't have a printer, just feel free to write it in your notebook. But make sure that you have the right equipment, because we're going to move on to that part. I would like to do some short exercise with you, and write down in your notebook, what do you see in this picture? You are more than welcome to pause the video, but I will move on. And I assume that you wrote what normally people say in this exercise, which is bricks, a short gap between the bricks and a small stone. But I would like to ask you right now to do some exercise with yourself and try to go out of your comfort zone and to look at this photo from a different point of view. And what I would ask you to find is the cigar. And I know you might want to understand what I want from you right now, but I promise you that it will be clear soon, okay? So if you think about this wall and this small stone and the gap, try to find the cigar. And when I say cigar, again, you need to look at it from a totally different point of view. Okay, I'm gonna move on. You're more than welcome to pause. It takes time to find the cigar, but I'll move on to the next presentation. And if you don't want to see the cigar, so pause and try to look it by yourself independently. Here is the cigar. If you can see, so this is a small stone, and this is the gap. And it was just, if we go back, so now when we took it back, now you can see that the gap is actually the body of the cigar, which it's stuck over here, and the end is, at the end of the cigar, it's like standing in between the bricks. Do you see that? Yes. So if you think about right now the cigar that you couldn't see before, and try right now to unsee the cigar. Is it possible that you can unsee the cigar? Yes. So here's the thing. This is exactly how Show Me works. Show Me reveals cigars. Show Me reveals cigars. Exactly the same as here. We looked at a picture, but you couldn't see the cigar. We have all kinds of blind spots in our life that we can't see. And once we see, we cannot unsee it again because we already see them. So that's how Show Me works. This is exactly how Show Me works. And the terminology of saying, I see the cigar, it's part of the process here. Today you're going to see the cigar. Today you're going to work. The first step in Show Me is to see the cigar. And that's the reason we did this exercise. So are you ready to start the first step? Yes, let's do that. So yes, today we are going to practice the first step of Show Me. And the first step is the spider model. The spider model is actually what it does. It reveals the cigars. And you can see here that we have 10 steps for this model, which this side, number 5, and number 10 are the most important part here. If you can see the word identification, right? So at the end, what we need to find, if you think about a cigar, so basically what you see in your life is only one belief, one voice, one side. And this one side is strong, is pulling you stronger to a very, very narrow way of thinking, very specific way of thinking that doesn't allow you to look at the bird eye view. and this is exactly what we're going to do today. You're going to expand your observation, and you'll be able to see the cigar. So you will be able to see the two identification the two beliefs that you have inside you. How are we going to do that? I'm going to lead you step by step from step 1 to step 10. While step 1 to 5 are talking about the half empty glass, and 6 to 10 are talking about what works for us. And what I would like you to do right now, if you have the kit, it's great, because right now what I will ask you to do is to look over the cards that you have and to go over and just to find one card that represents the situation that you want to raise up, that you feel challenged by. If you don't have the cards, don't worry. I totally, like, we can definitely work without. The reason that the cards help is because they stimulate the subconscious, and by that we're allowing ourselves to, find the discourse, the conversation way easier to express. And but it's totally fine if you don't have that. We're gonna work without. So if you don't have the kit in front of you, just think about a word that can represent a specific situation that you feel in your life it's been very challenging for you. I got an example here for you. The example is body image. I'm finding that many people have a struggle with the body image, so I decided to take that as a general topic that we're gonna use as an example. Feel free to write down whatever comes up for you according to the situation that you feel stuck. So number 1 will be just the title, not more than that, just the title of the situation that you feel stuck. Here, as I said, it's body image. I'm going to move to number 2. You feel free to pause every step of the numbers when you want to take your time to think. But for now, I'm going to move on to number 2. Number 2 is the perception, okay? The perspective, the number 2 is the perception, okay? Our point of view, our interpretation that we give according to the situation that we wrote in number 1. So for example, here in number 1. So for example, here, the body image, in the interpretation number 2, I wrote, I can't control me from eating when I feel frustrated. Okay? So that can be a great interpretation to the title of the body image. Of course, you can feel free to write down what comes up in your mind, and when you give yourself your own interpretation according to what you wrote in number 1. Okay? Again, you can feel free to pause anytime. I'm moving to number 3. So in number 3, we're going to write the emotion that is coming up according to number 1 and number 2. Okay? What do I feel? What the emotion that is coming up when I think about me, that I can't control my body and I can't control my eating disorder? I would probably feel sad and a lot of frustration and anger. And that's the reason I wrote it here. Again, feel free to write down what is coming up for you when you wrote what you wrote in number 2 and number 1. I'm moving on. You feel free to pause. And when we feel what we felt in number 3, what do I do? That's the question. When I feel sad, when I feel frustrated, when I feel angry, what do I do? All right. So I wrote, I keep eating. Feel free to write whatever comes up to you when you feel what you wrote in number 3. That was just for the example. Again, I am moving on. feel free to pause. But before we move on to number 5, to the identification, as I said, right now we are in this identification stage, okay? Identification step. What we're going to do now, we are going to create a story. We're going to create a story that this story is about a different person. It's not about you. It's very, very common in therapeutic practices to create kind of exercises that called distancing. We used to do that a lot in psychodrama practices. It's very common when we work with children. That way, it allows children and people in general to process it from a place that it's not judgmental, a place that we can allow ourselves to shift and move our inside and to look at it from different eyes. And this is what we're going to do here now. What we're going to do, we are going to share this story that you just wrote from number 1 to number 4. And this story, it's not about you. It's a story about someone else. And it starts with once upon a time. Once upon a time, there was a woman that she didn't like her body. And she felt very, very bad about her body image. And she couldn't control eating when she felt frustrated. She felt so sad and angry. And when she felt angry and sad and frustrated, what she would do, she would keep eating. So in that case, this story right now, it's about someone else. It's not about ourselves. And in number 5, what I would ask you to do is to give it a title. To give it a title as if we're talking about an archetype. It can be an archetype or it can be a word that comes up to you, that is coming up to you right now. So if we think about number 5 over here, we can write something like the storm. The storm, it's a word that represents kind of a metaphor about the situation and the word that I felt when I read this story. But again, it can be an archetype like the victim, or another archetype that I can add here is the unlimited unstoppable. The unstoppable. I can add another I can add an archetype. It can be a lot of archetypes that it's very individual and it depends on what comes up to you. For me right now from this story, it can be like the unstoppable woman. Okay? The unstoppable woman. Or it can be like the victim. All right? It can be whatever comes up to you. But don't argue and don't judge what is coming up. It's very, very important. Okay? All right. Feel free to pause. I'm moving on to the half full glass, which means right now we are moving to what works, for us. And before I move to number 6, I would like to first move to number 7. And then I will come back to number 6, I promise. All right. So number 7, I would like you to write down what works. What works? What works for you? It can be, if you can't find something that works for you, it can be very, very helpful if you think about, the strength that is coming up from the weakness, and I'll explain. Here in if we think about number If we think about number 7, I wrote daily communication with my body. But if you can see in number 2, right, you can see that the sentence, the interpretation that I gave, that the woman gave, is I can't control me from eating. If we think about the strength that is coming up from here, is the communication. Because in each choice that we are making, there is something that we earn. And obviously, if we think about the strength that is coming up from that specific choice that she can't control, is all the time to be in kind of communication with her body needs. And by that, her body as well as emotional needs, right? So in number 7, I would ask you to just write down what works. And if you can't find what works and you have the kit, go to the photo that you chose and just look at the photo and just write down what you see in your photo, but in a positive way, in sort of a positive way. If you don't have the photo, don't worry. It's totally fine. Take your time until you find one strength, one something that you earn from the situation that you are in. All right? So, number 7, you write number 7, you write your strength, your what works in the situation. Again, feel free to pause. I'm moving to number 6. All right? So number six is interesting because number 6, before I move to number 6, I would like to talk about this quote. And I'm going to add this quote here so it will be something that we will be able to look at it together, okay? Oopsie. Yeah, let's move everything. This quote is talking about, this quote is from Einstein, and it talks about learning how to ask a question. If I have an hour to solve a problem, I would spend the first 55 minutes determining the proper question to ask. Once I know the proper question, I could solve the problem in less than 5 minutes. Why? All right. The reason is because all the answers are hidden in the question that we are asking. And when we ask questions on a daily basis on all kinds of experiences that don't work for us, that means that we are giving again and again to ourselves the same answer, or not giving, we're receiving the same answer. And I will explain. Imagine yourself going to the dentist, and it was a very painful treatment. Based on that experience, next time that you will go to the dentist, the question that you might ask yourself would be something like, where it will be painful this time? That will be more or less the informative question that will come up from within, based on the experience that you had before, right? Doing that, what we do, we put our focus in a very, very specific way of thinking, which means we put the focus on the pain. And when we put the focus on the pain, what will happen when we will go next to the dentist and we will think about where it will be painful this time? We will feel where it was and we will say, I knew it. And guess what? When we put the focus on the pain, we will feel the pain, because this is exactly where the question is. So by asking, by learning, by teaching, by learning how to ask a proper question, we are already shifting the information, the focus, the point of view to a totally different angle, to a totally different place than the pain that causes us more pain. All right? It's like I like to give an example of a bowling game that once we shift a little bit the angle of the ball and we throw it, it will reach a totally different point, right? This is exactly what we do here. We teach ourselves how to ask a proper question. By asking a proper question, we are leading our insights to a totally different place to receive a proper answer. So for now, I promise to go deeper to that specific stage when in session number three. Session number three, we are going to go deeper and talk about the effective question. For this specific step, it's enough to know that it's very important to learn how to ask a question. And it's very, very important to learn what we want to write in our effective question. So, show me the best way is a very good key point to start to practice the effective question, because show me the best way, and that's the reason show me called show me. It allows you to ask an open question, and by that, what you do instead of like putting your focus on a very specific way of thinking that concentrate only on the pain of something that you already experienced, you open up the possibilities to allow yourself to receive an information about, or to put the focus about a totally different way, right? So for that, what we need right now in number 6 is think about your best scenario. What do you want to see when this challenge will be over? What do you want to feel? Think about the best scenario. So let's move to number 8. Number 8 is the emotional state of mind, the emotional level when we think about number 6 and number 7. So if we think about number 6, the best scenario, and if we think about number 7, which is already exists, what works for you now? What do you feel? Like, what emotion is coming up for you? Like, I wrote here number 8, aware and conscious, and feel free to pause and take your time to express your thoughts and emotions that are coming up according to number 6 and 7. I am moving on to number 9, which is the response, the reaction. When I feel aware and conscious, what I felt in number 8, what do we do? So again, feel free to pause. I'm moving on to number 9. When I am aware and conscious, I communicate. All right? So this is what I wrote according to this specific example. Again, feel free to pause and write what comes up for you when you feel what you feel in number 8. I am moving to number 10, but before we're moving to number 10, if you remember this story, right? So here as well, we're going to do the removal. So here as well, we're going to do the removal. So, and we're looking at the story of number 6 to number 9 as if it's about someone else. It's not about us. And again, I would ask you not to be judged, not to put a judgment here. It's very, very important. Okay? Once upon a time, there was a woman. She felt satisfied from herself. She felt in a very good, peaceful state of mind. She knew how to communicate with her body, and she was aware and conscious, and she knew how to communicate better with herself and with her body. She felt aware and conscious, and she was present and communicate with herself and with the surrounding. Who is this woman? So here as well, feel free to pause. Give yourself time to find the archetype. It might take time. All right? Feel free to pause. I will move on. And here I wrote the mediator. That's the archetype that came up to me in this specific example. Again, feel free to pause and take your time when you share the story as a third person with yourself. Now, when we're done with this process, I said that number 5 and number 10 are the most important part here. And the whole process was in order to find the two voices, the two beliefs that contradict each other, the two places that we have within us, the yin and the yang, the female and the male, those, the black and the white, the inner child and the responsible me. This is how I love to call it, because number 5 represents all the information that it's still not processed, that relates to the inner child, the place that we try to be right, the place that we're pulling and pushing and struggling with this specific voice. Normally in this specific stage, the first step of the game, number 5 in the barometer from volume, let's say 1 to 100, it will be quite high, normally, most of the cases. While number 10 is the cigar, the responsible voice that is there all the time. And this is the voice that represents our, let's say, our higher self, like our voice that knows everything, also knows how to enroll number 5 and to learn how to work together. That's the main purpose here in this process. Number 10 and number 5. And those voices are like the cigar, because before then, when we knew that we're in a challenge, we knew that we're struggling, we knew that we have kind of like, sticky situation, but we didn't know how to describe it. We didn't know that we have like basically two forces that they contradict each other, and what basically we feel is that someone is playing tug of war with ourselves, which I love to give it as a metaphor. Number 5 is pulling to one side and number 10 is pulling to the other side, and we're stuck in between. So what I would like you to do right now is to score the volume of number 5 from 1 to 100, which 1 is very, very low and 100 is very, very high, and do the same to number 10. And if you continue with the process of Show Me, you'll see that the tendency, as I said at the beginning, is to see that number 5 is very, very, very high. Number 10 is very, very low. Later on in this process, the voices is like they're exchanging powers. It seems like, number 10 all of a sudden gets all the powers. He feels that he's like on top of things. He knows how to work with number 5. And by the way, we don't want to take away number 5. We want to work with number 5. Number 5 is I love to call it clay, is the place that we need to learn how to mold, how to shift, how to work with. This is our inner child, with the tantrums, with all the places that we don't want, with the resistance, with all the judgmental and the painful places are coming from number 5. Places that we didn't regulate, we didn't process. And instead of processing when we needed, we pushed it aside, we put it in kind of like a Pandora box, we closed it, we shut it down, and what can we do? It will come up at the end, and we need to process it, we need to learn how to work with it. So the struggle itself is because we didn't process that before, and the process of Show Me is to really learn how to take number 10, how to teach number 10 how to work with number 5, how to integrate the voices. So yes, so as I asked you before, score the volumes of number 5 in opposed to number 10 from 1 to 100. And later on in this process, if you Show Me, you would see that if number 5 at the beginning was 100 and number 10 was 10%, I mean, later on in this process, number 10 would be, let's say, 90%, number 5 will be less. But by, let's say, meaning number 6 and 7 and on, those voices are starting to get balanced. At the beginning, they're not integrating yet. But that's the purpose. At the beginning, we need them balanced. We need the volume that it will be equal. And slowly, in this process, step by step, they're getting integrated. That's the whole point in this process, in this Show Me process. All right? So that was the first step of the game, to find the branches of the root, to find the stories that we have. And I can assure you that this specific story, if you'll do that on other challenges that you have in your life, you'll see that the pattern is the same, because it's kind of like a branches of the same root. You'll see on uh, the next step of show the game is to find the root of the branches, and this is a very interesting stage. Highly recommend, if you want to see and get more, you're more than welcome to purchase the online course. The online course teaches you how to play the game from the beginning until the end, and you'll see that step number 2 in this process is to find the root of those branches, which is very interesting. Okay, so that was the first step of Show Me. How do you feel? I hope that you're okay. I can tell you about myself that every time I do the spider, I feel that another layer came up just for me to look at. Yes, I can tell you that we are working with a lot of stimulation here. We're working with a lot with the subconscious. The subconscious is like the inner child. The subconscious is like our place that we didn't want to process all kinds of emotions in the past, so we push them away. And Show Me allows to unravel the layer that we already process. And yes, I'm sure there are lots of emotions here, which is totally normal, and it's totally okay to feel that way. And that's exactly what leads to observation with no judgment. That's the main key in Show Me. Lots of reason behind it. I'm not going to go deeper now. Thanks for having me. Bye for now.